Hello, I'm Carrie Gard, and welcome to Tea Time with Tech Marketing Leaders. We are live. Thank you all for your patience as we got up here and running. We're so grateful that you're here with us. If you
My
are
fault,
here,
by the way, my fault.
Eric, I was covering for you, man. If you are here with us, we'd love to hear from you. Drop a hello in the comments, and then we look forward to your questions because this is going to be a very awesome topic. Perfect timing for it heading into 2024. A new year, a new dawn. We get to redefine where we want to go and what that path looks like. And this is going to be a wonderful pathway to lead us there. So it's going to be great. Before I dive into the topic, today I have Eric Martin with me, Senior Vice President of Marketing at Stack Overflow. Hello, Eric. Welcome to the
Hello,
show.
thanks for having me.
So excited to have you. Eric has an extensive background with over 20 years of experience, having settled into demand generation marketing at Stack Overflow for the last 2 years. Before that, he was at SalesLoft for an impressive 4-year stint, Catapult Inc. before that for 4 years, and BCM before that for 4 years. There's a pattern here, Eric.
SalesLoft was 4 years and 11 months, just to be honest. So
I saw 4 years and 1. I didn't see it as 11.
could be
But
around there.
still,
But yeah,
4 or
give or
5
take.
years.
Yeah, give or take. That's
Yeah,
some
but
very
still.
presidential stints at places.
Indeed. And we're going to unpack that because I think there's a reason for it, and I can't wait to get there. And while this is all great information, that's fine. That's all fine and dandy. But what we really want is the story of how you got here. These are all sort of the behind, like the painting of the picture, the scenery of the backdrop of which you were on. But what was the journey for you going through those backdrops? Bring us along.
Yeah, I mean, I'm originally from up north, originally from Vermont. So the Green Mountain State, always be a Vermonter. But they don't have much of a summer up there. They don't have much warmth. And my wife and I definitely wanted to settle in down south. The journey down here has been interesting and extensive. My wife's and my careers have taken us down here. So grew up in Vermont, went to college in New Jersey at a university called Fairleigh Dickinson University, which is pretty small, but a great small business school, big international presence. Some people like to joke that it sounds like a fake university name in a movie, which I think is pretty funny. Fairleigh Dickinson University, like you gotta even imagine like an intro to that coming through. So a great school. Really enjoyed that. It was about a half hour west of New York, in Morristown, New Jersey, and loved New York ever since I was a youngster in Vermont. Youngster, wow! I think that might be the first time I ever used that word. When I was younger in Vermont, always loved New York. Loved traveling there. Going to the city. Got to go to a couple of Yankees games. Fell in love with it. After school. Graduated with a business management and information systems degree, and became a data center decommissioning and migration consultant for investment banks. Pretty exciting stuff. Hold on to your hat.
Very, very niche and complicated right out of the gate there.
Yeah, well, I had a couple of smaller positions before that, but that was really the first career that I settled into. I think a lot of the origin of that was that I'm just kind of geeky and technical by nature. The first computer I had when I was 6. It was the Texas Instruments TI-99A. It didn't even have discs. It had a big cartridge that you stick into the front. You plug it into your TV. Fantastic. Yeah, the big tube that made the noises when you turned it on and all that stuff. So that was my first foray into technology, and really fell in love with everything from there on out. So I leaned very hard into the technical aspects of my career and of my skill set right after school. And frankly, it was a great time too. It was just when the beginning of the move to the cloud started to happen, the late early aughts. 2009, 2010. That's when that shift really started to become more seismic. Really interesting and great experience, right? Here I am, fresh out of school from a couple of years, and I'm presenting to the head of global technology infrastructure at Merrill Lynch. I'm like, whoa, in the top floor of the building.
Right in the deep end.
people that are a lot more important than me around me and all that. So it was a great, my role was mainly project management, making sure that stuff happens on time. And I worked for a firm that assisted those banks. And it was a really great experience interacting with senior technology leaders, understanding their challenges at every level, from the head of technology all the way down through the different levels of engineering and architecture. So that was a great kind of initial experience for me. Now, what it didn't scratch, the itch it didn't scratch, was the creative side, right? So that was, I found myself in data centers with no windows and, no humidity, and very, inventorying things in server racks and, just in general, a very kind of a very highly technical field. But I knew that I had a creative outlet, that I wanted to have more of that. And I felt that marketing might be the way to go in terms of a way that leveraged the skills that I already had. I had learned how to write HTML, CSS, some basic JavaScript back in the day. And I, started making websites. I think even when I was 15, I made like the movie where, I'm going to date myself again. That movie where those 360-degree cameras kind of go around and like everything freezes and everything kind of goes around like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I can't remember the name of the
movie. So I developed a website when I was 15 for a company that made those cameras and setups in Vermont. So I was exposed to a lot of creativity when I was younger and had that chance. And this is a long-winded way of getting to my first startup experience, which was at BCM, or which was called Back Channel Media, in Boston. And this company made a piece of software that sat on a cable box that was written for cable boxes that would allow you to interact with what you were watching on TV. So let's say they would pass a small piece of data, right? And that small piece of data would go through the signal, and on this cable box side, it would pick up that signal, and it'd show a little icon that would say, hey, you want to learn more about this content, this product, or this service. So pretty interesting, right? When you think about, hey, I want to click on my remote, get some more information about a product. You think the product's cool. So yeah, now mind you, this was being developed and rolled out, and we were rolling it out right about when the iPhone came out.
Oops.
So if you can think of disruption, right? That was disruption defined, pretty much. Luckily the technology that we had kind of other use cases that were developed, and it was kind of interesting and valuable to other companies. So that company never really hit kind of that scalable revenue function or status level. So it was for a startup, it was definitely a swing and a swing and a miss. But that's how startups go.
That's how you learn. Yeah.
Work. It didn't discourage me. The company sold the IP. I got a little parachute to work with from that, so that was good. And cool. What I did was I found myself after that company was sold in New Jersey with my wife, saying, "Hey, where do you want to go? What do you want to do?" She had a very portable career at the time. Mine was pretty portable too. Tech. Fairly, as long as they're not, back then a little more geo-restricted than things are today, of course, but overall pretty portable. And I did some research on what are the growing markets and growing, geographies that are seeing kind of tech growth and that are seeing these kind of great tech communities emerge. And Atlanta was top of the list. It was the top of the list for all, and this was back, the heyday of the beginning of Atlanta tech. We're talking Silver Pop and AirWatch and Part Up. So tons of really impactful companies being born. SalesLoft, of course, was also born earlier on. So Atlanta was a great place to land. I did an email campaign about myself, wrote a website about myself, did that, pretty much did the
Well,
Eric
person.
Martin marketing campaign, got a bite, and joined Catapult, and joined as the first non-founding employee there. Walked into an office with 5 programmers, and they gave me a laptop and said, "Hey, marketing guy, here you go, start marketing." Built that from the ground up, and this was my first kind of pure SaaS, B2B SaaS play, which was great. And I got the awesome experience at Catapult of building everything from the ground up. So this was all the technology, all the lead generation, the website, the content mapping and development, everything. And then also I met my now friend and mentor, Kevin O'Malley, who was brought in to be the marketing leader there. Now, here's a life experience where, okay, someone was brought in over me, right? I wasn't given that chance to step up into the VP role. The leadership there felt I wasn't ready, and the spoiler alert was I wasn't. But it was awesome to have Kevin come in and really help take on supporting my development. And I had great bosses and great managers in my past that were helpful and supportive, but he really challenged me. And he was the first person that really challenged me to step back and think about what I really wanted to do. What do I enjoy? How can I, because, when I join a company, my quest is to generate value for the company as soon as humanly possible. Right. How can I do that? Enjoy myself and create a great place to work for the people on my team, right? I want to have a team. I want to have a team of people. I want to be a good leader, and I want to have them work in a place where they enjoy working and feel like they're delivering value to people. They're not just trying to fire away to hit a conversion rate number. So that was a great experience in that, and I think that was probably the position that I had was one of the most formative for my development. Just learned a lot. Had the opportunity to build a small team, work through things like performance challenges, budget challenges, resource challenges. I think that, one thing that I have had no shortage of in my career is adversity, challenging, startups with new disruptive business models, new disruptive technologies. Catapult was a mobile application development provider that created a low-code mobile app development platform. Was it pretty cool? Yes. Was it too soon to the market? Yeah, it was. Yeah. Now they're just becoming a little more interesting, and that's kind of becoming a more interesting space. But now there's AI.
Right.
So how is that going to evolve that market? And how's that going to shape, a low-code environment when someone else is doing the coding in the first place? So that was a really good part of the journey per se was that at Catapult. Now Kevin during that time had left Catapult a little bit before me, and he went over to SalesLoft. And I had I've been doing a little bit of consulting for SalesLoft on the side. I was very in touch with a lot of folks there. Yeah. Oh, need a minute. All good.
I got a little one out of bed.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're live right now. You're gonna hold right there, Eric, because I'm on the edge of my seat, and I'm just gonna make sure she's okay. 1 second, y'all. 1 second.
You let me know.
Okay, sorry
Yeah.
about a
No,
little
it's
intermission
life
there.
happens. Like I said, I was dealing with my dogs.
I mean, real life is happening
Yes,
all over the place right here, right? It's
it
Q4,
is.
y'all. This is a perfect summary of it.
Yeah.
Um, so it sounds like
We're making the move from Catapult over to Sales Loft. So Kevin brought
yes,
me
you
over
mentioned
at Sales Loft, and I joined Sales Loft as the director of demand gen role. Had a team of one over there, and this was right when Sales Loft was getting rid of their Prospector product and moving over to their Cadence solution, which was their kind of their more popular solution. Obviously, that became the one that really found traction. And I was brought in primarily to help us level up into the enterprise. That's what I worked on primarily at Catapult a lot. Catapult's customers were not small businesses. They were generally medium-sized to large-sized companies. And that's really been the theme throughout my career at Back Channel Media when I was working with large broadcasters, content providers, and cable companies. This is very long sales cycles with very, with a lot of constituencies, with a lot of disparate interests, and trying to get everyone on the same page and make deals happen. Catapult, similar in that regard, just with larger organizations that had big IT teams and big development teams. Sales Loft was all about, big sales teams and big companies and how could you scale? How could you scale faster? They had a lot more of a stronger SMB contingent, but that's why I was brought in. What do we need to do to help grow the enterprise? How do we change the way that we run campaigns? What's the message? What are the messages that we send, and how do we prepare our sales development function? And how do we enable them to be successful as we move up market? We obviously can't use the same tactics that worked, in the SMB or the mid market, lower end segments. Went to Sales Loft, walked in the first day. It was awesome. Hip hop on the radio, people tossing beach balls around, scooters, kombucha in the fridge. The whole startup vibe was great. Awesome company, great team, very supportive and driven executive team. Really, really invested in its people. Formal leadership development programs. Just an awesome place to work. And really a fantastic and the most formative role in my career. I think not only because of what they invested in me, but also that investment in me and my development really, I think, raised the importance of what I was trying to achieve.
Yeah, what do you mean by investment in you? What does that?
Bringing in executive coaches and taking managers at a certain level, like director level plus, bringing in executive level coaches that would normally counsel the C level, the SLT, the ELT, the strategic leadership team or executive leadership team rather. Those resources being pushed down to, I was a manager at the time, not even leading a department or anything like that. It was awesome. Getting that level of investment and exposure and opportunity to interact and get coaching and mentorship from those folks was incredible, and really powerful. And
We offer something similar here. We have
awesome.
it's not necessarily just leadership coaching. It's more about whole person coaching and helping people really find their way through their career up into leadership. But you got to work where you are and
Yes,
build up.
yes,
But it,
that's a great way, and I think an accurate representation of ours as well. There was a heavy personal component, understanding where you are and where you want to be, analyzing scientifically, taking tests and assessments
Mhm.
that help you identify those areas that might be blind spots where you want to develop. Working and identifying other peers that have these blind spots and areas for development, and working with them and knowing that you're not alone and that you have folks that you can work with and you have these peer groups that can help you be and feel supported.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
it's
pretty cool.
amazing.
Yeah.
It is. I totally agree. I think it's absolutely it is something we had a bit of a crunch this year and I protected it with everything I had to say this is non-negotiable. We need to keep this. It's just so helpful in helping people um really understand where they are, where they want to go, and building those career blocks I've seen like amazing transformations of people really stepping up and stepping in and mentoring others and like finding their like what they love about their job and getting into their zone of genius and like leveling up through it. All thanks, not all thanks, but in a good portion thanks to coaching. It's
Mhm.
powerful. So
Absolutely.
yes to that. So you're at Stack Overflow now. How's it going?
It's going well. It's when I learned about the opportunity at Stack, I was immediately interested because it's a website that, frankly, I used a lot when I was growing up. And kind of learning. Well, I was pretty grown by the time it came out, but honing my skills. Stack is something that you often might be interacting with and you don't know it. There's not only Stack Overflow, but the Stack Exchange network of websites where folks like it's not all developers, folks like electricians and and other folks can that require that kind of expert level question and answer can provide some insight. So a great opportunity to work for a great brand that I really respected. And when I was brought on at Stack, it was to grow our Teams product, which is kind of the B2B SaaS Stack Overflow Teams, the private B2B SaaS version of our community and public platform, which we provide to organizations that are looking to, I think organizations that benefit from Stack Overflow for Teams are those that have large development organizations, large development teams that need to collaborate, that have complex issues, that need to record institutional knowledge, right? So you have a lot of folks coming and going at a company. How do you keep that knowledge inside your company, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do we want folks going to Stack Overflow and asking questions about their programming issues? Yes, absolutely. Would we rather folks take those questions if they involve proprietary or private company information to their own company instance of Stack Overflow for Teams? That's even better because that provides a level of security and value to that organization, and also, frankly, it belongs. It's an important component of growing a technology function: documentation, onboarding,
Mm-hmm.
training, ensuring that the developer experience is a great one when they come to work at a company.
And in a tool they already know.
Yeah, a tool they already know. I mean, everyone, there are no brand awareness issues for Stack Overflow when we talk about us. So it's been very interesting and very fun to kind of just be a part of the organization and understand how we're serving our customers and hearing the stories of how successful they are and how we help global organizations be more productive and connected and collaborative, for sure.
You talk a lot about, I was wondering how you made the leap from SalesLoft to Stack Overflow, but it sounds like all your worlds sort of collided here in terms of helping a company and go to enterprise again, taking your SaaS experience from previous companies, and now you get to build a team. So it sounds like this is sort of the perfect spot where like all your favorite things come together.
And it's a bigger challenge too, because it isn't just about Stack Overflow's public site and Teams. There's also an advertising business that includes, traditional brand advertising as well as an employer branding offering. So there's also our self-serve kind of product-led growth motion, which is awesome, which is our self-serve offering for Stack Overflow for Teams. So it's not just that B2B SaaS motion. It's got me, comfortably uncomfortable in a region where, I've got a bunch of different kinds of businesses that I'm working with and understanding their needs and trying to grow accordingly. And it's been really awesome. There's a tremendous community here. We have very passionate customers. And yeah, it's been great to kind of, not only take what, like you said, take what I've learned, but also continue to build on those different levels of experience.
Oh my gosh. Yes to all of that. I feel like we could have an entirely different podcast around going from the SMB, small business, medium-sized business world to then helping
Sure.
companies level up to
Definitely a fun
enterprise. So
podcast.
I think I'm going to have to, I might need you to to come back on later to do that because I have so many questions. Especially when you talk about like the sales cycle is so different. So yes, but I'm going to put a pin in that and put that topic over here for a second. I'm sorry, folks. I know, but we're going to come back to it. I promise. I'm going to have Eric back. It's going to be awesome. For this conversation, before we dive into the heart of our conversation today, I do want to ask you, because we're all human and life is hard and it is Q4 and the struggle is real. What's happening for you right now, Eric? What's a challenge you're currently facing? What's hard?
What's hard? That's a good question. I think that in terms of one of the bigger challenges that I think, frankly, we share with a lot of go-to-market organizations is how do we be more? How do we do better at delivering value with less noise? Right. One of my philosophies about marketing and demand generation in general is that our challenge is to deliver value in some way. What does value mean for people that are viewing marketing? Right. Value might be sparking a thought, right, or making a connection, or challenging someone's assumptions, right? Demonstrating and teaching people. We have a tremendous amount of data. So for instance, our dev survey had one of our biggest years of participation ever, with 90,000 participants to our dev survey. It comes out every year. What are the insights that we can derive for the community from there, and how do we effectively disseminate that out? So for me, we've got a lot to talk about. That's great at Stack Overflow. How do we talk to the right people that care about what we're talking about? Things that are relevant to them, things that help them with their daily life, that help them deal with what's hard, right? Therein lies the value, right? Is how do we help folks deal with their challenges? So if we're doing that, then we're doing our job. I think that the old days of heavy volume focused prospecting are coming quickly to a close. I think rethinking the sales development function, how it operates, that cadence of activity, and how those teams mature and grow, and really that space in the go-to-market organization, how we as marketers and demand generators collaborate and serve that team, right? We collaborate so closely, it feels like we're one team, even though we're different teams at Stack. So that's a good thing. And I think that's where a lot of folks want to be, right? So that applies to sales development, applies to demand gen, the marketing campaigns that we have, the campaigns we have through social channels. So overall, that's what's hard for me right now, is not weaning off of we've been very effective at doing that. It's how do we just get better? How do we get more relevant, more valuable to our audience? That's the challenge. That's the big thing that I'm dealing with right now.
I also like what you said about the noise. How do we not create more noise at the same time while trying to cut through what's already there? Because you can't quiet everybody else around you, but you yourself don't want to contribute. I think is a really powerful statement, and something we all are thinking about, of back to quality, back to creating relationships instead of having to hit our activity numbers. We're sort of we need to slow down.
Yeah, maybe it isn't about having a happy hour with 100 people there that all fit your target audience. Maybe it's about that dinner with 10 people.
Maybe
that really matters. Maybe it's not about that at all. Maybe it's about delivering thought leadership. Maybe who knows? Either way, it's different for different folks, and it depends on the audience. Yeah. And it also depends on if you have, and your resources, right? Do you have people in the cities in which you serve that you can have those in-person dinners?
right?
Yes.
So it's this balance, this beautiful, never-ending Tetris and balancing act of, the budget, the resources, the people resources, and what your audience really needs. And I think taking, even though with AI, it makes it feel like we can go faster. It's actually a good point to say, actually, we as humans can slow down knowing that AI is going to help us deliver faster, but we can be more intentional and thoughtful in what it is that we're doing to begin with, instead of feeling like we don't have enough time and we're going to run out of time and we're up against the clock. Um, and so I love what you're saying, and I'm tripling down on it super hard because I think it's a message we all need to hear right now as we're winding down 2023 and heading into 2024 and thinking about how we need to reapproach how we do everything. The audience has changed, and we have been very slow to change with it. So,
Yeah, and I mean, and I don't know if you've heard of this whole AI thing, but there's definitely some implications there for go-to-market teams in terms of how they interact with folks.
mhm,
The different types of solutions that are frankly going to come out to combat noise,
mhm.
right? Which are already happening and already coming out. There's a lot of technological, um, you know, kind of winds from a lot of different directions that could sway things in a different way.
Definitely. Ah, yes, that. Well, let's talk about our topic today. One of the themes I mentioned in your resume was that you had stayed at these companies for 4 to 5 years, which is frankly unheard of in our, unless you're like me and you build a company that takes you 10 years plus to do.
You gotta kind of stick with it.
Generally speaking,
Yeah.
it's very unusual. I think I jumped around, before I started my company, I jumped around. I don't think I stayed anywhere longer than a year and a half. Right? That's just how you had to build and grow. You had to jump to get to that next level and to do that next thing. It sounds like you had a very different career path in that, and that you could stay at these companies and you could grow your career. And I wonder too is when you're building the teams, right? So it takes time. To your point, you started out of a lot of these companies as like the first here marketing guy, here's your computer, right? So it takes time to build all those systems and processes to get the website up and all those things, and then bringing the team in behind it. Am I on the right track here? Is that a contributing factor to why you were able to stay at these companies so long, is that you got to build from the ground up and you got to build teams in some ways?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a big driver, especially earlier on, right? I think there's also an element of I joined these and my first two kind of tech startups, right? Very, very early. Either the business like Back Channel Media had a totally different business and it was pivoting to something totally different, this kind of clickable TV product. Catable, I literally walked in, was the first non-founder employee. It doesn't get
Yeah.
much earlier than that without being a founding employee or the founder themselves. And SalesLoft was a little bit different in that it was a mature organization, but it still was kind of fit into that first example where they had an existing product with Prospector. They launched a new product with Cadence, and they were shifting over to Cadence being the platform, which eventually just became SalesLoft. That's the product. Like the Prospector product never would have been an enterprise marketing or sales challenge, right? It wasn't a fit for that type of company or organization or persona, but SalesLoft was. So I think there's an element of me just being early, to a new challenge, to a new product, to a new effort, and just getting in on that ground level and really being tasked with building something from the ground up. I think Stack is probably the one company that has bucked the trend a little bit, just because there's so many different businesses here, but it kind of still fits into that whole, we've got these different types of businesses, but we've got this one, really huge business that's delivering a lot of value to customers that we really want to invest in and grow. And we're going to really pour a lot of our resources into growing that. And so I think there's a matter of timing. I also, I will say this, I don't know if this is tooting my own horn or anything, but I don't like giving up. A lot of folks, can't take a bad quarter or two.
Mm.
And bad quarters happen.
Yes.
Right? Bad months happen, bad days happen, bad quarters happen. Things get tough at companies, and there's adversity. And I think what I've tried to do in my career is lead from the front. And when I detect it, try to acknowledge it, come up with a plan, come up with a strategy to deal with it, to grow, to keep growing, to sustain the momentum. And that's really what's I think helped me to stick around. But really, the thing that really keeps me around, frankly, are great cultures. I think that's even more so for the latter half of my career. Earlier startups, it's scaling cultures less important, right? It's about hustling, getting the work done, delivering value to customers, getting revenue, growing the company. You want to have a good culture, and you want to have good leaders, and you want to be, you want that. But when you're a larger organization and you have a large team, and you want to be able to develop folks, and I think that those companies, especially SalesLoft and Stack, have really invested a lot into me. And that really does tend to keep me around, and by investing, it isn't just providing coaching and opportunities, it's giving new challenges, challenging with new responsibilities, right? Giving the opportunity to try to level up. That's a really important and critical piece, just as any employee, any level in any profession, that I would want in order to advance in my role.
I do think, yes, having the next challenge and feeling challenge is definitely something everybody needs to keep going, which is why I think people tend to bounce, because they don't get that quite quick enough, at least earlier in your career. And then once you can sort of settle in and find a path through and up, then people are more likely to stay, for sure. I also wonder if, looking at like a lot of the layoffs and things that are happening, or the CMO turnover is insane. And I think it's a good conversation to have, because it sounds like you were very lucky and that your leadership teams trusted you to turn the ship around. And I unfortunately don't think that everybody gets that same shot. So yes, hats off to you in weathering those storms and that adversity, and getting out in front and creating a plan, and also acknowledging that sometimes, unfortunately, the CMO takes the fall for whatever reason, and then is let go and never given a chance to weather the storm. So
I think that's a whole nother podcast topic.
That is a whole other podcast. I just want to call attention to it for those folks who might be listening going,
there's folks that have been dealing with that for a much longer time than I have, that would be able to provide a lot more perspective. But I completely agree. That one's a puzzling one for me too. I've read a lot about it, and how it's evolved, and I feel like it's not going in the right direction even now, just based on what I'm seeing out there. But therein lies the challenge.
Yeah. But I think it's good for founders, CEOs who might be listening to the show to take note of like somebody who has been able to weather the storms. If you let your CMO stick it out, let them figure it out, give them a moment to get through the storm, because the storm chances aren't just happening to you either. Look at the market, look at the bigger picture. Like there's a lot of factors, and I think it would be great if we could help, if there's even just one CEO listening who is having a moment like that, I would consider that a win. But we will move on, because you're right, it's a whole other show. It's probably a round table, quite frankly. I'm going to
sure. We want some
I'm going to take note of that. Let's do that. Look at all this content we're building, Eric. This is so fantastic. We're going to have another podcast around going to enterprise. We're going to have a round table around, weathering the storm. Yes to all.
I'll send you the invoice for all these ideas. Don't worry.
I'm stoked. In terms of building a team, one of the things that you mentioned you love to do is helping people sort of find the roles and responsibilities within an organization. So let's talk about I think there's two ways to approach this. We can either talk about it from a place of brand new, so because you've done that often, where you come in and you're the first hire, and then you get to build the team from the ground up. So how do you find those roles as you go, versus walking into an existing team? Um, and it sounds like, based on your experience, starting from the ground up would make the most sense in terms of how we approach this conversation.
Actually, I'd probably take it the other way
All right,
because
let's do it.
I would say earlier in my career, um, I I think it's a little bit more prescriptive when you're just kind of building it from the ground up, right? Because it's all you. It's your decisions. It's there. You're second guessing yourself. You're
Right.
holding accountable the goals that you set and that you made. I think interacting or joining a new team, whether existing individuals that are, frankly, every team has folks that perform at different levels, right? Than
Mhm.
others, understanding who has strengths in what areas, um, uh,
Yep.
understanding the trajectory of where they want to develop. There are a
Right.
lot of variables that go into joining a team and assessing a team and understanding how to grow and develop those folks. Um,
Well,
and
let's start at building trust, because I feel like before you
Yeah.
can do anything,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
you're the new guy on the block. So, how do you go about helping people, like, figuring out, like, how to bring people along before you can even tell them, sort of, before their start of sort of direction laid?
Yeah, I think there's a few things that I think about when I think about building trust. Number one is doing what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. So living up to your deadlines and your commitments as a leader. I think another thing would be uh, so there's your deadlines, there's your commitments. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think of the right words for. You want to make sure that people are working toward the right goal. You want to make sure that there is vulnerability and transparency. Those are those two other things that are really key. So, as a leader, I want to come in and I want to set the tone for. I do as I say, um, and I do it on time. I want to set the expectation that people can be vulnerable with me, that they can be transparent with me, and that they should be able to be transparent and vulnerable with each other.
How do you
Um,
that's incredibly important, yes, and as leaders, we definitely want people to feel that way, but it's a steep mountain to climb, especially being new to the
Takes
organization.
time. It's a steep mountain that cannot be climbed with a slide deck, or a presentation, right? You can't just get on the monthly marketing meeting or biweekly or weekly or whatever you have and say, okay, everyone, remember, be vulnerable and be transparent. Thanks for coming. Like that's not how it works. It's about really training people how to do that and challenging folks. When there's a cross-functional disagreement or misalignment, challenging folks to create that level of trust between um, those parties so that they can get stuff done. It doesn't just stop with your team. And a team that interacts internally in a healthy way with that vulnerability and transparency and trust will function cross-functionally at a much higher level, because they know that this team is great to work with. When I work with this
Right,
team, they say they're going to get what they're going to get done. They get it done on time. If there's a
right.
problem, they come to me and they ask for help. So
Clear expectations, it sounds like
clear
across the board.
expectation. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Clear expectation. So um,
Is this a challenge in terms of, like, the over-promising, under-delivering sort of mentality that we all sort of fall trap to of like
Yeah, I mean,
people
I think,
please, you want to be
yeah, there's
perfect.
an element of that. Always lean toward under, right? But I mean, I think folks can kind of detect when you're doing that a little
Yeah,
bit,
totally.
So I try not to do the whole under promise, over deliver. I try to just kind of hit the mark as close as I can from the,
Yeah,
from the,
realistic, right?
yeah,
Here's
yeah,
what we
just
can do when
exactly.
we can do it.
Realistic is a great way to put it. Is just make sure that things are grounded in data and reality and not assumptions and anecdotes. Assumption and anecdotes are critical. I'm not going to say that they're not, but you have to have the other two elements to make them work.
To go with it.
The
Yeah. People
context,
remember stories, not data, but you need the data to tell the story.
exactly, and then then it all makes sense. So, yeah, but vulnerability, trust, and just but it starts with the leader. It starts with the leader, number one.
So
Which,
how do you show up and create vulnerability and transparency every day and make people feel like they can do the same?
um, I think it's wow. It's a great question. I'm trying not to have like too meta of an answer. Um, I think just being direct, um, and being open and saying things that people wouldn't normally expect you to say, catching people off guard, with honesty, with kindness, right?
Yeah.
Um, uh, trying to surprise and delight your team.
In what way? I love surprise and delight. Well, how do
Yeah,
you
I
go about
mean,
that?
by sharing, telling stories of accomplishments. Um, you know, um, when you can extend, kind of fun stuff, having those moments of fun and interaction, not losing sight of the little things that add up, the human interaction, treating people with respect, um, not being evasive, not regurgitating the company line for line, but understanding where our part of the whole mission is and conveying like, yeah, I could read off the corporate strategy and all the initiatives that roll up to it. And that's all really important. That's why I'm here, right? I'm here to help us as a team achieve these company goals. Um,
But how do
but
we fit into that, right? Instead
how
of
do we
to
have,
and where are we today? How does it apply today? Whenever I do the all hands for our company, I always go over the values because it's a nice reminder of why we're
Mhm.
here.
We
But
used
I
to do
always
that.
bring it back to right now where we are. So if I was to do the all hands today in Q4, I would be talking about people first from a team oriented standpoint and grace, right? Of between sicknesses and time off and the holidays, right? Like how we need to give each other a bit of grace right now. That would be one way that I would do that. And I totally agree that you don't want to be a talking head of just reiterating like what the the leadership team is, saying and just being a mouthpiece of that. So yes to that. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's a cliche, but I try to be the leader that I would want to be led by, and I try to really make sure that everyone's understood and heard and valued, and if everyone isn't, then I can do better.
How do you define the right goals? So is that by role? Is that by
Yeah, are you
the
talking to
company?
individual goals or?
Well, yeah, I said people working towards the right goal.
Yeah. So this is an important. This is probably one of, I think, the most important functions of any marketing leader, is being able to take a company objective and really translate it into what does this mean for our team, right? Like if we are, if we are a company that has a really, powerful, demand channel, and we want to open up another demand channel, looking at this, the one that's driving, let's say this one's generating 80% of the revenue, this one's generating 20%. Understanding how we want to break those investments up. Taking a big company objective and saying, okay, so this is how much pipeline that we need to generate for this business to grow. So, okay, segment leaders, you are responsible for this. You're responsible for this. You're responsible for this. And, I just don't want to give you these numbers. I want you to develop the plan on how you want to achieve them. So I don't prescriptively push down project plans to folks. I don't tell them what to do. I tell them what the goal is, and I work with them to make sure they have the resources to do what they feel is right, and that I agree is the right approach for our team. So it's really about empowering folks.
Yeah, they feel more invested, right, in doing the work.
Yeah, they feel much more invested. Nobody likes a micromanager. Folks like autonomy. This goes to any even cross-functional thing, right? Like, if we're going to do a marketing campaign and we don't bring SDR to the table and get their feedback, then we're not doing it right. So we need to really understand the needs of the entire go-to-market organization, make sure we're fulfilling them as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point to bring in that cross-function. Has anybody ever pushed back on you and said, this is impossible? These goals are impossible?
Sure, yeah.
And what's your response to that? Is it figure it out? Is it why?
No, it's not figuring it out.
Good. I didn't think so. Based on
I wouldn't figure it out. No, I think the response to that is, and this was, this is very common at Stack and Sales Loft and many other companies. It's don't forget to set aspirational goals, right? So when I set goals for folks, when I don't set goals first, would work with folks to set their goals. I like to have a mix of kind of the, operational improvement, like trying to constantly, continuously improve on the things that we're doing on an everyday basis, right? But then there's also, what are the crazier ideas, the more bold ideas? What are the things that we want to try that are aspirational? If we've got this goal for a campaign, why don't we make it 50% bigger goal? Success is a smaller number, a smaller portion of that goal, but maybe we'll learn more, or we'll get more value from that test or that experiment or that project or that campaign. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I love that. You're giving people a chance to learn versus just feeling like they can only do what's going to work.
On what they're doing today, and give people a chance to stretch and do something that they weren't doing today, tomorrow.
Or that they've been meaning to try and just haven't had the capacity to do, but by making it a goal, then you create the capacity to get it done.
Yes, and then our job as leaders and managers is to ensure that there's the support, the coaching and guidance to be able, and the resources, frankly, to be able to get that job done.
Yes, absolutely. Goal setting is so important. Do you do that on a quarterly basis, annual?
We do it on a semi-annual, kind of like a first annual cut, and then like a semi-annual kind of, take a look at the goals, make sure they're all right. 6 months is a long time. Mm-hmm. And so understanding, what of those goals are still applicable, adjusting and going from there. So
yeah, especially when you're dealing with the sort of long lead cycles and those sort of things. It sounds like you're getting a lot.
There's no shopping cart abandonment and stuff like that. These are very long strategic projects that are big bets.
Yeah, no, but I think that's so important that you're giving space and time to see if things can work. So many times we pull the plug too early, and it's just that we didn't quite crack the code on it, but we were on to something. I always like to talk about progress. As long as progress in some capacity is being made and we haven't taken any huge steps back, then let's keep pushing forward and see where we go. We haven't hit the goal yet, but we're on to something and something's happening. Yeah. So I like the idea of progress. Yes to that. The last thing you mentioned, well, we touched on all three. So creating the correct expectations, setting those deadlines and hitting them. People working towards the right goals, and then creating a place of vulnerability and transparency where everybody feels like they can be as my coach likes to call it, heard, seen, known, and accepted.
Mhm.
And so
Good way to put it.
I love that. My last question to you on all of this is, how has this impacted, at the end of the day, we all have to strive towards outcomes, and you mentioned the goals. Have you seen a difference in the teams you've worked with where you have this and you don't, in terms of the culture and the deliverables and the outcomes? Is there a clear difference?
Oh yeah, 100%. I think that one of the biggest differences is that what you end up with now. One of the most important things about setting goals is not setting them in a vacuum, right? So I think it's really important across, even internally within a marketing team, because marketing isn't like sales in a lot of ways. We don't have like an AE, an SDR, a CSM function. Then you're AE 1, 2, 3, 4, or SDR 1, 2, 3,
Right.
4. It's very different disciplines, very different types of people, developers.
It's a little
Demand
more
gen
organic
marketers.
too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all different kinds of disciplines. So, what I think we are trying to, or what I think is important is, I think it's really important that we understand that that there's people around you that can help you hit your goal, and if you work with them and help them understand your goals, then you'll have not only you'll have a supportive environment of people around you. If you have goals that are achievable, um, uh, you can feel that sense of achievement that actually generates positive business results for the company. And if you have goals that are aspirational, you feel like you're growing, right? So you have a good team, a good environment. You've got the sense of accomplishment in getting things done, and then you've got that sense of growth. And when you
Yeah.
combine those three things, what I feel like you have is you have not only a good, highly operating team, but you have a better, more highly operating organization in general, where people are just working better together.
Yes, to that. Oh, I there's such a different vibe when you're in an organization where you're there. I've worked at both, where you're an island and
Mm-hmm.
everything's on your shoulders, and good luck to you. And as long as you're doing well, we'll keep giving you more to a detriment. And on the flip side, where you are part of a bigger organization, I remember sitting at the in Seattle. I was at MEC Wonderman in working on the Microsoft account, and there was it was a huge open room, and the desks were all together, and our VP was sitting just 3 seats down from me, and we had these cubicles, but it was open. You could see right over them and talk to people, and the camaraderie in that room of how we all worked together was just, you could feel it when you walked in the
Mm-hmm.
room. Like it, you had those things. You had clear goals, you had aspirational goals, you felt very seen, heard, and accepted. I turned to my this other senior that I was working with, and we would banter all day, like sort of have these mini arguments about why things are working the way they are or aren't working, and what's going on, and
Mm-hmm.
like spiritual debates, not spiritual, um, uh, yes, anyway, these wonderful debates that I live on today. But yes, I agree. There's definitely a different feel to those teams, that you can get a sense of just by being in the vicinity. So yes to that. This was wonderful, Eric. I'm so grateful.
Yeah, thank
Um,
you. Thank you. Appreciate it. And I'll try to minimize my in real life distractions moving forward. But
the
it
same,
happens, right?
same. Life. This is what happens in your life. Welcome to
Yeah.
the show. Eric, where can people find you if they want to learn more about what you're doing, Stack Overflow, and how to
Mhm.
build great teams?
Yeah, Stack Overflow, I think great place to go, stackoverflow.com. Stackoverflow.co.co is our product site. You can learn more about our B2B products and services. And if you want to get in touch with me, I'm very accessible. Just hop on LinkedIn. You probably saw Carrie's post, but feel free to connect or direct message, and I'm there. Look forward to it.
Amazing. Amazing. Eric, I'm so grateful. And thank you to our listeners for joining. If you like this episode, please like, subscribe, and share. This episode was brought to you by MKG Marketing, the digital marketing agency that helps B2B brands grow via SEO and digital ads, measuring it with analytics end to end, the full customer experience. If you want to be a guest on the show, I'd love to have you. DM me. Let's hang out. Let's tell your story. I look forward to it. Eric, thank you again.
Thank you. It was fun. Appreciate it, Carrie.